Hey, what's up, y'all? Welcome to the first episode of Politics Be Like. I'm your host, Terrell Anderson, and today I will be discussing the Democratic primary elections and how the Democratic Party has been rigging the elections. And are they really a fair elections? Are the Democratic Party really for fair democracy? And if you want to follow me on social media, my Instagram is Terrell the Socialist. You can also search Terrell the Socialist on TikTok and Twitter, also known as X, and follow me on there. So let's get into our discussion today. I want to first start off by saying that I've always been a Democratic voter ever since I turned old enough to vote. I've always had faith in the Democratic Party, and I've always been a loyalist to the Democratic Party. But since the 2016 elections, I've been waning off of the Democrats for a while because I've noticed a couple of things that they have done in the sake of saying it's a fair democracy and a fair election. And today we're going to be discussing those things. Now, full disclaimer, although I'm going to be exposing some things about the Democratic Party, I would like to say even though Biden is our choice and the only choice that we have for the Democratic Party right now in this year's election to go against Trump, I would prefer Biden to win, even though I feel like the Democratic Party is not really going to do anything to to create real change in this country, the change that we actually need in this country. But I would rather him win than Donald Trump to win, because if Donald Trump wins, it is going to be more terrifying than Biden winning, and that's what I believe. Do I want to vote for Biden? No. Do I like President Biden? Not really. Do I wish there was another choice besides President Biden? Of course I do. I hate that there is a Biden and Trump rematch, and that's something I never wanted to do again, or never wanted to see again. Now, the Democratic Party has always held itself as the party of democracy and fair elections. And over the years, I've noticed that the Democratic Party haven't kept their word on being fair in elections and keeping up with democracy, being that they have been subverting democracy for a while now. And they have been choosing presidential candidates without allowing the voters to actually choose the presidential candidates. And in this episode, we're going to get into that, and I'm going to explain to you what I mean by that. And I'm also going to show you a couple of receipts to prove what I'm saying is true. So I'm going to start by saying that there are currently two factions of the Democratic Party. We have progressive Democrats and we have moderate Democrats. Progressive Democrats are also called leftist Democrats. And moderate Democrats have a couple of more names. Moderate Democrats are also called centrist Democrats or liberals or establishment Democrats or corporate Democrats. And there are stark differences between these two types of Democrats. For example, progressive Democrats would like to pass more policies that actually help people. And, moderate Democrats would like to pass policies that help people a little, but also cater to millionaires and billionaires that are in this country. So, for example, let's talk about health care. A moderate Democrat would pass policies that say, hey, we're going to make health care more affordable. And the same goes for college. A moderate Democrat would pass policies that say, hey, we're going to make college more affordable as well. On the other hand, the progressive Democrats would say, we're going to make health care free, meaning that when you go to the doctor or you go to an ER or you go to the dentist, you don't get a medical bill in your mail, and you don't have to pay anything when you go see a doctor. If you have to go to the emergency room, you will not have a medical bill. Now, progressive believes in what we call universal health care, also called Medicare for all. And under this system, the government takes the taxes that they already collect from working people on their paychecks and uses that money to pay for universal health care, to pay for your health care expenses. So if a woman wants to have a baby, and it costs $10,000 to $15,000 for a woman to have a baby in America. But if a woman has a baby, she can have a baby and get all the care she needs without having a bill in her mailbox when she gets home. And the same goes for college. Progressive Democrats would like to see the tax dollars that they already take from you being used to pay for your education. Instead of you having to come out of pocket to pay for health care and education, the tax dollars that you already pay will be used to pay for those things. Now, that's just one difference between moderate Democrats and progressive Democrats. I myself am more of a progressive Democrat. I like progressive Democrat, leftist Democrats, as you will. And, you know, I consider myself to be on the left of politics. So let's start off with talking about the 2016 elections. For those of you who were there, in 2016, during the primary election, now I'm only talking about the primary election. Now the primary election is when you have multiple candidates competing for the same seat. For example, in 2016, Obama was about to leave office, and they needed a new president now. So Hillary Clinton threw her hat in the race, Bernie Sanders threw his hat in the race, and a couple of other Democrats threw their hat in the race. So Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton was competing against each other to be the nominee for the Democratic Party to go up against the Republican nominee. Now, the thing about the 2016 election is that the Democratic Party actually stole that election for Hillary Clinton. They didn't steal, the Democratic Party doesn't steal elections away from Republicans. They steal elections away from themselves and the voters in their own party. So during the 2016 elections, the Democrats had two candidates vying for the presidency seat. That was Bernie Sanders and that was Hillary Clinton. Now, there are differences between Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton. And I'm going to read you I'm going to tell you the differences in their policies. So Bernie Sanders is more of a progressive Democrat, while Hillary Clinton is more of a moderate Democrat, a Democrat somewhere in the middle. So I'm going to give you a rundown of policies from both of them and how they differ between the two Democrats. So I have my computer here in front of me to give you notes. So let's talk about taxes. So when it comes to Bernie Sanders and the tax policies, one of his policies was to increase the tax rate on billionaires to 10%. So billionaires will have to pay 10% more in taxes, or a 10% tax, because there's not currently too many well thought out tax regulations for billionaires. He also wanted to introduce a 0.2 tax on American companies that send their jobs overseas. American companies send their jobs overseas because sending jobs overseas is cheaper labor, so they can pay people less than they pay here in America. And they can also pay lower taxes in other countries. And Bernie Sanders wanted to say, well, if you're going to send jobs that are meant for Americans to another country over the waters, we're going to tax you for that. Because we're going to tax you on the money that you make over there, because now you are robbing American people of jobs that they need here. Hillary Clinton, on the other hand, she only wanted a 4% tax on people that make over $500 million. So that includes billionaires, 4%. That's not enough. And a 10% tax would increase the amount of money that this country brings in a year. And it will also help pay for the people in this country to have free health care and free college. There are many other countries, I think like 97 countries that have a democracy like America, and they all pay for universal health care and free college. In other countries, their citizens get to go to college for free. Their citizens doesn't have to pay for health care. But America does. And people like Hillary Clinton, moderate Democrats, also Joe Biden, they say, well, we can't do that in America. That's not feasible. Well, how come other countries have figured it out and they can do it, but you keep telling us that America cannot do things like this? We can't use y'all taxes to help y'all pay for health care. We can't use y'all taxes to give you guys free college education. But yet Democrats continue to complain that we have not a lot of teachers, not a lot of doctors, not a lot of electricians, and etc. But if you tax mega wealthy in this country more, you can help raise that money to help us pay for free college and free universal health care. So now that we have gone over the differences between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders, let's talk about how the Democratic Party rigged the elections to make sure that Hillary Clinton was the nominee, even though Bernie Sanders was the one who would beat Trump by large margins that the polls have shown. Now, if you aren't aware, in 2016, the Democratic Party had their emails leaked. And in these emails, it had found that the Democratic Party planned to sabotage Bernie Sanders' campaign. And this is weird to me because polls would show that Bernie Sanders was ahead of Hillary Clinton and ahead of Donald Trump. While Hillary Clinton would still beat Donald Trump, but by very, very small margins, like 1%. But there are also times where Hillary Clinton's polls was going up and down between Donald Trump. But the one fact of the matter is, regardless of that, whenever they put Bernie Sanders up against Trump, Bernie Sanders demolished Trump by large numbers. So in 2016, when the Democrats' email had leaked, it showed messages between the Democratic Party's chair, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, that's her name, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and how she said mean things about Bernie Sanders, and about how people within the party was planning to sabotage Bernie Sanders' campaign by going to the media, asking them to ask certain questions or say certain things, because for some reason the Democratic Party did not want Bernie Sanders as president, even though he was leading Trump in the polls by large numbers, and even though Hillary Clinton was leading Trump. But the thing about Hillary Clinton leading Trump is that she was only leading Trump by like 1 point or so like that. But also it's the fact that every time Hillary Clinton in the Trump polls goes up, in some cases Hillary Clinton was losing to Trump. But it always showed that Bernie Sanders in every poll always won against Donald Trump. And then the Democratic Party comes and says, oh, the Democrats don't want nobody like Bernie Sanders. He's a socialist. Democrats don't want those kind of policies. But the polls beg to differ. The polls said differently. Now, since it came out that the Democratic Party tried to rig the elections against Bernie Sanders, a lawsuit followed. And in this lawsuit, of course, it was basically saying that the Democratic Party was rigging the elections to favor Hillary Clinton instead of Bernie Sanders. Now, this is where it's crazy, because in a democracy, in a primary election at least too, voters get to decide which Democratic candidate they think would be the best to go up against the Republican. So they're either going to vote for Bernie Sanders or they're either going to vote for Hillary Clinton. And it shows that more people favor Bernie Sanders over Hillary Clinton. And all the polls show that when you put Hillary Clinton against Donald Trump, it's not looking like a big win. And if you put Donald Trump up against Bernie Sanders was winning against Trump in large and major numbers. Now, the crazy thing about this court case is that the court ruled that the Democratic Party had the right to rig the primaries against Bernie Sanders. That's right, that's exactly what I said. The court said the Democratic Party, which is a private organization or a private corporation, has the right to rig America's primary elections against Bernie Sanders. And that's crazy, because a private corporation can rig our elections. That is what's ridiculous to me. And another thing that's ridiculous is that this set a precedent that in the future the Democratic Party can actually rig the election against anybody else they don't like. So if the leaders of the Democratic Party say we like Hillary, but the voters in the country say they like Bernie, the Democratic Party can make it so that Hillary wins over whatever the voters want, in which they have been doing since the year of 2016. Now, if you don't believe me, take a look at this poll here from CBS News and the New York Times. In this poll, you see that Clinton against Trump, Clinton was at 47%, Trump was at 41%. But Bernie Sanders against Trump, Bernie Sanders is at 51% and Trump is at 38%. So Bernie Sanders would beat Trump by larger margins than Hillary Clinton if you're looking at this poll. And that also means that people favored Bernie Sanders even more than they favored Hillary Clinton. Here is another poll from Reuters. All of these are 2016 polls that I'm going through right now. Here's another poll from Reuters that shows that Donald Trump beats Hillary by 1%. Now, this is what I meant when I said by Hillary polls fluctuate. Whenever there was a poll against Hillary and Trump, sometimes Hillary is in the lead, and the other times she was not in the lead over Trump. So her polls was going up and down, up and down. On the other hand, Bernie Sanders' poll always stayed consistent with beating Trump. And this was in 2016. So, and if you look here, you'll see that Bernie Sanders beat Donald Trump by 14%. That's another poll where Bernie Sanders demolishes Trump. But yet, the Democratic Party wanted Hillary Clinton, whose polls continue to fluctuate. Now, the main reason Democrats wanted Hillary Clinton because they wanted to be the first party to elect a woman as president. but they was not paying attention to the polls that shows it's a toss-up. We don't know if Hillary gonna win or lose because her polls fluctuate between her and Trump. But Bernie Sanders' polls stayed high every single poll. But they rigged the election so that Hillary Clinton would win the primary instead of Bernie Sanders. Now, take a look at this from the public policy polling. It says the difference between how Clinton and Sanders fare against Trump comes almost completely among young people. In the full field, Clinton leads Trump 46-24, but Sanders leads Trump 64-18. It's baffling to me, y'all. Clinton leads Trump 46-24, but Sanders leads Trump 64-18, with voters between 18 and 29. So by rigging the election against Bernie Sanders, they basically, all the 18 to 29 years olds that was going to vote for the first time or now trying to vote, the Democratic Party just threw them away. And they did, and guess what? They didn't vote that year. They either voted for another person or they didn't vote at all, which helped Hillary Clinton lose because the Democratic Party threw those voters away, and they throw Bernie Sanders away when it showed, every poll showed that Bernie Sanders would beat Trump astronomically over Hillary Clinton. It's crazy. And it's all in the last part of it. And then the last part of that says, in one-on-ones with Trump, Clinton leads Trump 49-27, but Sanders leads 70-14. Still very much higher numbers than Hillary. And here's another poll from CNN. In this poll, it says, if Hillary Clinton were the Democratic candidate and Donald Trump were the Republican candidate, who would you more likely vote for? Now, Hillary Clinton was leading Donald Trump with 54-41. And if you look at the list of the numbers, by January, Hillary Clinton was only leading by 48% to 47%. And you see how hers just fluctuates over and over. And her margins are closer to Trump than Bernie's would ever be. Now, in that same poll from CNN, they asked if Bernie Sanders was the nominee going up against Trump, who would you choose? Bernie Sanders led Trump by 46% to Trump. Bernie Sanders led by 56% to Trump's 40%. Still higher than Hillary Clinton's. Voters wanted Bernie Sanders, but the Democratic Party did not. They wanted Hillary, all for the sake of being the first party to elect a woman as president, regardless of what the voters wanted. And going back to these DNC email leaks, there were also leaks that showed that the Democratic Party wanted Donald Trump to win his primary election because in their head they said, ain't no way that this country is going to elect Donald Trump. And in some instances, some Democrats was willing to help Donald Trump fundraise a little more money to make sure that he is the nominee for the Republican Party. Because in their heads, there was no way that this country would elect Donald Trump, and the Democrats was so sure. I mean, they was completely sure that Hillary Clinton was going to win and that she was going to beat Donald Trump. And see, that is my problem with most of these Democrats like Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, and Barack Obama. They are lost in their own sauce. And you have to think about it this way. Democrats like those three I just named, see, they live in a bubble. Like this, they go to a grocery store, they may complain, dang, food is getting way more expensive. At the end of the day, they may complain about food getting more expensive, but guess what? They still make enough money to buy that food. Just like they have enough money to not worry about if their rent is going to be paid or their mortgage is going to be paid. Hell, they own their home, so they probably ain't got to pay no mortgage or no rent. But at the end of the day, they don't have to worry about any other bills, whether it's going to be paid or not, because they have the money to pay it. They may complain about high prices, but they still got the money to get it. Whereas people like me and you and most of other America who don't live that kind of life, we go to the grocery store and we see food is high. We like, dang, I can't get eggs today because I ain't got enough money. I can't get milk today. I ain't got enough money. They may complain, but they can still buy it. We gonna complain and we can't buy it. See, they live in this bubble, And when they go and campaign, they're going to campaign in affluent neighborhoods, nice neighborhoods. You don't see them coming to the hood to campaign. You don't see them going to the rural country areas to campaign. They're not going to step foot in these places. So they're not even out here in the crowd with us. We on the ground. We see what's going on in these communities. And they need to realize that there are more poor class and working class people in this country than there are millionaires and billionaires. And that's the thing that they don't understand. They live in this bubble where they're surrounded by people with money all the time, the donors or people in affluent neighborhoods, and they listening to those people who are on the ground with the people who work. These people don't talk to the janitors of places. They don't talk to people who work in factories. They don't talk to the people who work on the farm for real. They don't talk to these people. So they just go by their inner circle of friends with money and saying, oh, there ain't no way Donald Trump gonna win this election. But people like me and you, we knew it was a possibility. Those types of Democrats, they didn't think it was a possibility at all. And that is my problem with moderate Democrats like them. See, we on the ground, we hear from regular people all the time. They don't. So we know what America really is. Even then, during 2016, Democrats acknowledged that there was racism in this country, but some of them was like, it's not that bad. But now, since Donald Trump got in office, they realize it's that bad. Something that us people who have to work every day for a living and live paycheck to paycheck already knew. Something we already knew. They didn't recognize that because they living amongst their rich and affluent friends. Now, even though Bernie Sanders was in the lead in most of these polls, the Democratic Party couldn't have him. For some reason, they don't want a progressive candidate in their party. They don't want people who's going to say free college and free health care. They don't want that. They claim that they care about the people and they want to do this, but their only job is their only job for them is just the lower cost. They don't want to give you health care. They don't want to tell you we're going to use your taxes to pay for health care. They don't want to tell you we're going to use your taxes to pay for your college. They don't want to do that. They want you to still pay for it. They don't want progressive candidates who are going to use your taxes to help you out and pay for your health care, pay for your college. They don't want that at all. So Democrats realize, dang, Bernie Sanders might win this thing, but they don't want no progressive candidate like Bernie Sanders. So what do? They called in all the favors. They called in celebrities. They called in Hollywood. They called in the top Democrats that are already elected to say, everybody go and endorse Hillary Clinton. Everybody go and endorse Hillary Clinton. They called the news stations to say, everybody endorse Hillary Clinton. And that's what they did. They endorsed it. And next thing you know, Hillary Clinton started shooting up in the polls. Why? Because people started seeing celebrities endorse Hillary. They started seeing prominent politicians endorse Hillary. And my question is, why are y'all so easily influenced? Why are y'all so easily influenced? Because that's the only reason Hillary Clinton got that nomination. Bernie Sanders had to drop out of the race because he knew the Democratic machine stepped in and ain't no way he was going to win fair and square now. Especially since the emails leaked that they tried to rig the campaign against him anyway. There was all kind of hit articles coming out against Bernie Sanders when he was running and winning. So now the nomination goes to Hillary Clinton. Bernie Sanders had to drop out. He knew the DNC had the machine and the money to make sure that she can win. So he dropped out. So now that we've covered how the Democrats rigged the election in 2016, let's fast forward to 2020. By 2020, Trump is on his end of his first term, and people are yet again going to elect a new president. Either they're going to elect Trump again, or they're going to elect somebody else. And this time, the Democrats threw Joe Biden in the race. Bernie Sanders jumped in the race once again. Marianne Williamson jumped in the race, and a couple of other candidates jumped in the race. But guess what? Yet again, they rigged the election against Bernie Sanders again. So here's the thing you need to know. During the primary election, Bernie Sanders won the 3 battleground states. The 3 battleground states that every candidate tries to win, whether it's Republican or Democrat. Every candidate tries to win those 3 battleground states. But here's the crazy thing. Bernie Sanders is the first presidential candidate in this entire country over the entire time this country has been here. He is the first and only candidate that's running for president that has won all 3 battleground states. the first and only candidate to ever win all 3 battleground states. And that means that not Joe Biden, that meant that Bernie Sanders was leading in the Democratic race at this point, but the Democratic Party still couldn't have that. They didn't want Bernie Sanders, so guess what they did? Called in favors again. They called other candidates and said, we need y'all to drop out the race and endorse Biden. They did exactly that. Then they got Obama on the phone. Yo, Obama, we need you to, drop a video endorsing Biden. And he did that. And black people gonna listen to Obama. Once these people started endorsing Biden again, guess what? Biden was now in the lead. Bernie Sanders dropped out yet again. I just don't get it. Why do they keep doing that? And this is supposed to be the party of a fair election. This is supposed to be the party of democracy. That's not democracy when you have to manipulate the world into voting for the candidate that the top leaders of the Democratic Party want. Not the voters, but the party what the top leaders want. And the crazy thing is, those same people who voted for Bernie Sanders in 2016, they voted for him again in 2020. But this time, they didn't stay home and not vote. This time, they didn't say we're going to vote for another party. This time, a lot of those Bernie Sanders voters actually voted for Bernie Sanders. And not Bernie Sanders, but they actually voted for Joe Biden. And the reason they voted for Joe Biden this time, because everybody was scared of another Trump term. Everyone was scared of another Trump term. So those Bernie supporters was like, okay, we're going to suck it up. We don't want to vote for Joe Biden. And it was adamant. All over social media, everywhere. People was like, we're not excited to vote for Joe Biden. We don't want Joe Biden. But we're going to vote for him in order to keep Trump out of office. So Bernie Sanders supporters sucked it up and voted for Joe Biden. Do you think they're going to do that shit again in 2024? You think they're going to do that shit again in 2024? You have a lot of voters now saying they're not doing this again. So that's why people don't know if Biden's going to lose or win in 2024. Because these progressive Democrats within the party, they're tired of the Democratic Party playing in their faces. And I am too. I am tired and they are tired. So now we are entering the 2024 election and the primary has passed. And yet the Democrats did the same thing yet again. They rigged the primary election in Joe Biden's favor. Jesus, when is this going to end? So if you aren't aware, Joe Biden had 2 candidates in the Democratic Party that chose to challenge him for his seat. Marianne Williamson and Dean Phillips. Now, many of you may not have heard their names, and that is because the Democratic Party stepped in and put a halt to it before it even began. Now, the news and media refused to bring those 2 candidates on to be interviewed and talk about what they want to do. The media ignored both of those candidates. And the Democratic Party also canceled their primary debates. Usually in the primary, when you have a couple of candidates running for the same seat, especially in the Democratic Party, if you have 4, 3, or however many candidates wanting to go up against the Republican, they're going to hold a primary debate, ask the questions about what they want to do with the country, what they're going to change, how they will be a better president. But the Democratic Party decided that this year, we're not going to do that. We're not going to let Joe Biden debate anybody because we already made up our mind that Joe Biden is going to be the one to go up against the Republican. Now, I want to start by talking about the New Hampshire Democratic primary election. So if you haven't known, or if you don't know, in the 2024 primary, the Democratic Party set a schedule and said that this year they want North Carolina to hold their primary first before any other state holds their primary. Because in primary elections, there are certain states that go first before every other state hold their primary election. And historically in this country, New Hampshire has always been the state that holds their primary election first. And that has now become a part of New Hampshire's identity. Since they've always held their primary first, it became a part of their identity. They take pride in being the state that always held their primary election first. But this time around, the Democrat made their own rules and was like, hey, we want North Carolina to hold their primary first. But I must remind you that the United States Constitution says that the states get to decide when they hold their primaries. The state, not the Democratic Party, which is a private company. The Democratic Party doesn't get to decide which state holds their primaries. They can suggest it, and the states can go along with it if they want to, but some of the states, like New Hampshire, can't do that because New Hampshire has passed a state law in their state that says they will always be the state to hold their primary first in New Hampshire. So the Democratic Party was mad that the New Hampshire Democrats decided that they're not going to move their primary. And the thing is, the New Hampshire Democrats have no say-so in when their primary is. That is left up to the state, Secretary of State, and the legislator. Since the law passed that says that since the law passed in New Hampshire that says they must be the first state to hold their primary, it's not a federal law, it's a state law. They have to abide by it. So the Democrats were pissed off. So the Democratic Party sent a letter to the Democrats in New Hampshire and said, if you hold your primary before North Carolina, your primary is meaningless and it doesn't mean nothing to us Democratic Party if you hold it before North Carolina. And that was the craziest thing to me. Why would you tell the Democrats of New Hampshire that their primary election means nothing to you? And even before so, Joe Biden decided, I'm not going to put my name on the New Hampshire ballot because they decided they still want to go first after we asked them not to. But the problem is they don't have a choice on whether they go first or not because their state law requires them to go first. And guess what? That state is ran by Republicans. So in order for New Hampshire to move its primary to a different date, the Republicans would have to agree to pass a law to move the date. And do you think that the Republicans are going to do anything that the Democratic Party wants? No, they hate Democrats. But the Democratic Party, the National Democratic Party, took it out on the New Hampshire Democrats and called their election meaningless. Joe Biden said, I'm not going to put my name on y'all ballot. But it wasn't their fault. It was the Republicans' fault. And that is something that baffles me about the Democratic Party. First things first, like I said, the Democratic Party doesn't have any authority to tell what states to hold their primary first. That right is given to the states. You can't make a state do what you want. And secondly, if that state was Democratic, maybe they would have complied and did it. But that is a Republican state. And the Republicans was not ever going to listen to the Democratic Party telling them to change the primary. And not only that, in some states, Democrats hold their primary election on different dates than the Republicans in those states. But New Hampshire is not one of those states. In New Hampshire, Democrats and Republicans both got to hold their primaries on the same date. And that date is set by Republicans. Democrats have no control over when the elections is in New Hampshire. But the National Democratic Party deciding to take it out on the Democrats of New Hampshire is ridiculous. It's like, not only that, they told them, your votes won't count. They told them, even if y'all go and vote, y'all votes won't count. And guess what? Even though Joe Biden didn't put his name on the ballot and told them that their election was meaningless and that they would not count their vote, Democrats still went to the poll. They wrote Joe Biden's name on the ballot, and he won New Hampshire. But they still didn't care. They still don't want to count Democrats' votes. And it's just ridiculous to me that after the Democratic Party did that and Joe Biden did that, that the Democrats still chose to vote for Joe Biden in New Hampshire. It doesn't make any sense to me. This man and the Democratic Party literally said, we disregard y'all, we don't care about y'all. And y'all still wrote his name in and helped him win that election. And they still not counting y'all votes. Now, another thing the Democratic Party did was, in Florida, the Democratic Party canceled their primary elections. They said, we're not going to allow anybody else to run against Joe Biden. We're just going to make him the nominee. Meaning that if anybody in that state wanted to vote for Marianne or Dean Phillips, they didn't have the chance now because the Democratic Party of Florida canceled the primaries and said, we're just going to give the nomination to Joe Biden without anybody votes. That's not democracy, and that's not a fair election. They did it in 2016, 2020, and now again in 2024. And not only that, the Democrats have been trying to get, the Democrats tried to get Marianne and Dean Phillips removed off the ballots in other states, and they had to challenge that legally in court. It doesn't make any sense. Because the crazy thing is, the Democratic Party and the top Democrats in the party were like, Joe Biden is going to win. He's the best candidate for the job. But my thing is, if he was the best candidate, why didn't you allow elections? And why didn't you allow other candidates the fairness of those elections? If you really believe that people were still going to choose Joe Biden even if anybody else jumped in the race, why didn't you allow fair elections? If you believe wholeheartedly that Joe Biden was going to win regardless who else is on the ballot, why did y'all make such an effort to cancel primaries, to kick candidates off the ballot? If you thought he was going to win, you should have let the race run its course and showed them that Joe Biden would still win. Instead, y'all made efforts to kick people off the ballot and cancel primaries. It doesn't make any sense. They did it. Like I said, 2016, 2020, 2024, Democrats have been rigging their own elections. They haven't stolen the election from Republicans. They haven't rigged the election against Republicans. They've been rigging their own elections against progressive candidates in their own party. For the last 3 elections, Democrats have rigged their own primary elections. And they are still to this day saying Joe Biden's going to win, Joe Biden's going to win. I think a lot of people are fed up with y'all. I'm not sure how this election going to turn out. I'm pretty much not sure. But this concludes this episode talking about the Democratic Party and primaries. Stay tuned for the next episode, and remember, find me on social media. Just search Terrell the Socialist.